In this episode of Home Theater Geeks, I talk with several members of the Value Electronics TV Shootout team and reveal the king of 4K TVs. So stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek. On this episode, I'm going to be talking with several members of the Value Electronics TV Shootout team about the recently held 19th annual TV Shootout. And what that means exactly, we're going to find out right now. First up is Robert Zohn. He's the owner of Value Electronics, a retailer in Scarsdale, New York, and the host of the TV Shootout. Hey, Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. I'm very proud and very happy that you invited me today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm always happy to talk to you about this event because it's a really cool event.
You were a moderator more than once, I think.
More than once. I was the MC, and maybe I will be again. Who knows? But I have attended several of them, and they're really, really interesting events.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also with us is Jason Dustal, who is a technical trainer, I believe. Is that correct, Jason?
That's the one. You got
That's the one. With AV Pro Global, a company that produces and offers for sale various tools for the audio video industry. And you were the calibrator at this year's TV event. One of several. Am I correct?
Yeah, one. My job with the TV Shootout is a little bit of calibration work, but mostly it's kind of behind the scenes doing all the switching for the big panel of TVs or the big wall of TVs, I should say, doing all the switching, making sure everything's working correctly, making sure all the scenes are queued up at the right places and chapters and all the stuff that you see behind the TVs, behind the curtain, if you will. But yes,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Yeah, but thanks for the invite, Scott.
Oh, you bet. Well, I'm so glad you're here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And third up, we have David Mackenzie, who is a colorist and a calibrator. And he was one of the judges who was evaluating the TVs in this year's shootout. Hey, David, welcome back. Always great to have you here. David and I have worked together on the shootout, along with Jason and Robert, in years past. I wasn't there this year, so I'm particularly interested in hearing about the event this year and how it went and what the results were, which we will get to later. First up, I thought, Robert, why don't you give us a little bit of history of the Value Electronics TV Shootout? This was the 19th iteration, the 20th year since it started, but there was one year there with a little thing called a pandemic when you couldn't hold it.
That's right. Well, the way this actually started is I started my company, Value Electronics, 28 years ago. Before that, for my entire life, I was a TV broadcast engineer. And we used to go outside with all the TV broadcast cameras, all the national film cameras and digital cameras, and all the professional monitors, and we would line them up, and we would see how the monitors and how the cameras look as close as possible to real life. We did this outdoors, and we would say, this one looks like what we're looking at in real life. So I took that concept, that idea, and I started in 2004 to publicly put out the TV Shootout, where we take only the premium high-end TVs from every brand. We line them up, butt up against each other at the exact same center line, bring in people much smarter than me to evaluate them. We fly in Hollywood filmmakers to be our judges with David Mackenzie. And we bring in Jason Dustal, of course. We can't do this without him because he brings in all the gorgeous high-end Meridio professional switching equipment and has all the skill and knowledge to set everything up and to make it all work behind the scenes, as he well said. And we bring in famous video scientists to do the presentations. So this is we run it like a government science lab.
An important point, I think, to make here is that you line them up right next to each other, and you also make sure they're all calibrated.
Yes.
so that they're performing at their very best.
Yes. So the main objective is the best TV that it could deliver its best picture. But we also evaluate, and we gave you the ballots, how they perform out of the box.
I think that's new this year, isn't it?
No, we've done it quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
Quite a bit.
All right.
Because a lot of people don't calibrate.
Correct.
We want to tell the public, and there are different results, a little bit slightly different as well.
Well, we're going to see those results in a little while. Jason, what was your sense of calibrating the sets? Were they pretty easy to calibrate? Were they pretty close out of the box, at least in a cinema or filmmaker mode?
I always describe today's TVs and today's calibrators. I'm starting to sound like the old guy. You kids have it so easy.
Yeah. Back in my day.
Yeah. Walking up hills in the snow. It always has been, you'd have to fight TVs to get them to dial in. And I always describe this as, back in the day, it was like we were, cavemen hitting the TV with a stick. And nowadays you have these tools that are very affordable, very easy to use. And you have TVs now, almost any price point, that have a very good menu with all the controls that we need. And those controls actually work as intended. So advanced grayscale controls, advanced color gamut adjustment controls, and things like that. I feel like I'm saying this every year, but it's 100% true. Every year they're getting better and easier and better and easier. And we had a couple of manufacturers that participated in this shootout, and we were able to give them some awesome feedback on how to make their controls work better.
Cool.
Maybe on later firmware, maybe on the next model, but just getting a bunch of folks in the same room together with a common objective and with some reference material to actually look at. It's a really fun event to see, to get the manufacturers involved and give them feedback. Guys like David Mackenzie, who sit in front of calibrated screens and know exactly what they're looking at all day, every day. Filmmakers like Phil Holland, who knows exactly what they're looking. So getting all these people in one room together is just an absolute blast. And as a, guy who turned his hobby into a job, it's very, very, very fun for me. It's a lot of work. Robert can tell you, Dave can tell you, but it's a huge payoff and lots of fun. But to answer the question, we didn't have any TVs that calibrated poorly. They all calibrated very well, and they all looked really good afterwards. There was really no, runaway winner like there has been in the past. It was like they were all so close to each other. So they all calibrated well. They all looked great. That was kind of my perspective. And from behind the scenes, when switching them and things like that through a 8x8 matrix switch, we really didn't have any issues with the TVs switching a lot, which isn't normal. In your normal everyday TV watching, you're not constantly switching inputs and constantly doing this and changing modes. But the TVs all responded very well to all that intense switching, if you will. So from my perspective, it was a great event. Everything worked well, and the TVs looked great, and it was all good from here.
Fantastic. David, you've done a lot of calibrating, obviously, in your life. Do you agree that TVs are getting easier to calibrate? They are getting closer to what they're supposed to be more easily these days?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's much better awareness of it now. Like the example I always go back to, and I think it's kind of what Jason was getting at, was when in my past life as a reviewer, when I was reviewing consumer hardware, there were, for example, those Panasonic plasma displays where the color of the green primary was just so far out of any broadcast standard. And the marketing people thought, oh, this is really cool because it's better color than anything else can do. And it didn't take too long for that to change, and you could get by the end of SDR being the best thing,
standard dynamic range.
Exactly. We had displays that were doing just a really, really good job of reproducing that. When the OLEDs were new, there were some hiccups with accuracy, but I'm really talking about the last gen plasma displays, which remained state of the art for a while. And then HDR kind of changed everything up. But I mean, yeah, there's an awareness of calibration now that there wasn't maybe 15, 20 years ago, and why it matters.
Well, we're going to see the results of the calibrated version and also the out of the box performance. This year, as in a couple of years past, we've been looking at not only 4K, but also 8K TVs. Robert, what do you think that 8K is going to become mainstream? I mean, is it now?
Well, people said the same thing about 4K, and it's certainly. And I don't need to remind everybody that Amazon Prime joined the 8K Association. They didn't join that and pay all that money for no reason.
Yeah.
I brought with me my Fuji 8K native 8K mirrorless SLR camera. I shot my son's wedding in our backyard, COVID style, back a few years ago.
Yeah.
I put it back on an 8K TV. I thought I belonged in Hollywood. It was gorgeous. I do want to touch on something that Jason brought up a little bit. The purpose of the event is for you to pick the best TV for your use case and use the ballots to pick out what's important to you. Do you care mostly about contrast or color accuracy? And you want the highest peak lumens. You pick a TV that matches your interest in your use case. But what actually turned out to be the most important part of the shootout, in my humble opinion, is the manufacturers bowing down. We hold their feet to the fire. And every year they discuss with all of us and all of our calibrators, what can we do to make it better? And every year we see them listening to us and making great improvements in the overall picture quality. 2 years ago, they hired all of my calibrators. I can't mention the name because I don't want to bring Samsung up. They hired all of our calibrators. I couldn't use them at the shootout anymore because they were biased.
Because they were being paid, they were being employed by
quite well.
Yeah.
And they hired every single one of them.
Well, speaking of calibrators, just want to mention that this year, the calibrators were Jason. You did some calibration.
Mm-hmm.
Dwayne Davis was one of the calibrators, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's D-Nice on AVS Forum. John Reformato was also a calibrator, has been for some years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a guy named Cecil Mead, who I've never met before, so he's a new name to me, but I'm sure he helped a great deal to get things calibrated. We have a picture of the judges. I just want to show this picture. And Robert, tell us who we're looking at here, left to right.
These are world-class judges, mostly made up of Hollywood filmmakers. I think we have, it's maybe not all judges there, because that looks like Dwayne Davis, I think, on the left.
Oh.
And David Mackenzie's 2 over, and that's Woody. Is that how he calls himself?
I think that's right. And Dave Medina's there in the far right.
David Medina, who's with
Phil Holland's in there. Caleb's
Phil
there
Holland.
as well.
These are famous videographers and senior colorists. And David Medina is in charge of picture quality for HBO Warner Brothers.
Right. Phil Holland is a cinematographer, well known.
Very well.
Phil's the Apple TV screensaver, a lot of overhead city shots. Those are Phil shots. So his shots are viewed by everybody on the planet who has an Apple TV or Apple device. Yeah.
If you have the new Mac OS and you have those moving wallpapers of the cities, I asked him again. That's him. So
that's him.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Everyone
he knows what he's doing.
Yes. Yeah.
We had David Medina, you mentioned, director of encoding services at Warner Brothers Discovery. Kenneth Almestica, level 3 calibrator, ISF level 3 calibrator. Brian Stout, otherwise known as Woody. He's the founder of Woody's Sound Up, which is a social media channel devoted to all this stuff. Greg Tarr is there, who's the managing editor of HD Guru, one of the websites we all know and love. And Richard Drutman, is he in that picture?
Yes.
He's a colorist and a calibrator as well. So a real serious group of golden eyes, what we in Hollywood sometimes call golden eyes, right? Mm-hmm. People who understand what color displays should look like and can identify flaws of just about any type.
One more very interesting comment I want to make is every year I look at the calibration reports. They exactly match the results. We don't share them with the judges. But the best color accuracy, they nail it to the whatever the science is behind it.
Right.
The contrast, the black level, everything, every technical detail, they nail it 100%.
So in today's episode, we're going to talk about day one. The event takes place over 2 days. This year it was September 30th and October 1st. And on day one, you looked at 4K TVs, and on day two, you looked at 8K TVs. So we're going to split this into two parts, really. So this episode is part one, and we're going to look at the 4K TV shootout. And I have a list of the contenders that I would love to show everybody. And there were, I think, 6 of them. And you can see here was the Hisense. There was a Hisense and LG OLED, of course. Samsung QN95C, which is a mini LED LCD TV. The Samsung S95C, which is this year's QD OLED. There's a Sharp in there, which I haven't seen Sharp in the shootout in a few years, I think. And also the Sony A95L, which is QD OLED as well. All of these 65 inches, and I really applaud you for having all of them be the same size. And then, what very importantly, the reference. Jason, tell us about the reference.
Sure. So the latest reference monitor from Sony is the BVM HX310. You can see it listed there on the screen. It's a dual layer LCD, soon to be replaced by, I think, the 3110. Robert and David, feel free to fact check me on that. But these are the monitors that are used to color grade the movies and TV shows that we all watch and love. Mm-hmm. You have a colorist. He's the colorist is sitting in a workstation. They're typically looking at that monitor, and they also have a consumer TV, that any of us can go buy. Not all of us can go buy the reference monitor. It's very expensive, but
yeah, $30,000.
Right, it's
for a 31-inch TV.
Yeah, it's $1,000.
It's not a TV though. That's the one thing.
True.
Hey,
very different use case.
Yes, it's a monitor.
Mm-hmm.
It has no tuner. It has no speakers.
Right, exactly. Only one HDMI input too. I mean, it is a straight up reference monitor, but these are the monitors that everybody's looking at to make these films and movies and TV shows that we like, and even some video games now. So the point is, we get that reference monitor into a state that you would see it in a studio, and we try to match the consumer TVs to that reference monitor. It's really important for us to have the reference monitor, otherwise we don't know what we're looking at. So it's super important to have those. And we actually had 2 this year, which made, I think, the judges' lives a little bit easier because they didn't have to move around the room so much. But everything that we do is based off that Sony reference monitor. That's the truth teller, if you will.
Right. David, how is it? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
Because we had 2 reference monitors, and by the way, they're $40,000 each. But because we had 2, there was the reference monitor butt up against every single one of the 6 TVs. Because we double stacked the TV, and we put a reference monitor in between each double stack. So it was butt up against every single panel. Very easy to see the difference between the picture quality.
Right. David, though, how was it looking at a 31-inch TV and comparing it to a 65-inch TV?
Oh, that's a good question. Like, to what extent does the bigger size of the consumer TV throw you? Yeah. I think for any of the judges here, we can kind of tune that out. Like we're getting close to the BVM and close to the consumer TVs. But these things are the performance of the new QD OLEDs, especially, is so good. I'm talking only, of course, about the 3 OLEDs, the emissive displays. It's so close to the BVM monitor that you really do have to get up close to see to really try and see any differences. But no, overall, I don't think we were able to tune out the differences in size. Put it that way.
Right.
And Scott, that's a display that you don't want to see, by the way, the reference monitor.
Why is that?
Because it ruins you. It's so good. It's like hearing a really nice pair of speakers that you can never afford. They're really incredible to look at, and to see consumer TVs that any of us can go buy from anywhere. Come close to matching that with some adjustments. It's pretty unbelievable. We would if we looked at this event today, how this last one turned out versus 10 years ago.
Oh yeah,
you wouldn't be able to. I would not believe you if you told me that these consumer TVs were as close as they were this year. They're incredible.
Right. Well, Jason, you were involved or in charge more or less of the system configuration. We have a graphic showing what that was like, and tell us a little bit about this.
So you mentioned 8K a little bit before, and the question was, what about content, and is it going to go mainstream and this type of thing? Robert had mentioned about Amazon being part of the 8K Alliance. From our company standpoint, we make video distribution and test equipment. We've been doing 8K stuff. We're going on our second year now of doing 8K. And the question being, is 8K really going to be a thing? And we're already encouraging our customers who are traditionally integrators, commercial and residential integrators, they're putting in the backbone for 8K today. So we might not have tons of content available. There's not none, but there might not be a ton. We are encouraging the integrators, and they are doing it, pre-wiring buildings with fiber, for example, to make sure that we can get those high bandwidth signals to and from when the day comes. So as far as the backbone goes, we used all 8K capable equipment. So
even for the 4K TVs?
We did. And it made it a lot easier because I didn't have to have one 4K switch and one 8K switch.
Good point.
Yeah. So what I was able to do on the 8K day on our 8x8 matrix switch, or any of them for that matter, you could log into the web GUI with the IP address. And for every single output, there's a drop down, and I can say, scale this output from 8K down to 4K, or scale this output from 8K down to whatever. So I could go into the switch on the 8K day and just change a couple of settings on the switch. And I only had to use one switch for the whole event, which was nice.
Yeah.
The reference monitor, since those we didn't really do much with those other than send them signal. And they mirrored each other. We were able to take a distribution amplifier, well known as a splitter, and come out of one of the outputs on the 8K matrix switch, split that out into two feeds for the Sony reference monitors. So this way, the way I had the switch configured, I could send the Apple TV, or I could send our generator with a Meridio generator with test patterns on it, or I can send signal from either one of the Oppo players to any of the displays that we were looking at, that the judges were looking at. So it was kind of cool. There's probably some pictures floating around out there of the setup. We did it a little bit different this year, and I really applaud the team for this. And this may have been, David, this may have been your idea, but in years past, we've had one Blu-ray player, and swapping out discs and fast forwarding to the right part and waiting for all the credits at the beginning and all that stuff just took up a lot of unnecessary time. So David was nice enough to donate/loan the event to Oppo Blu-ray players while a scene was playing on one player. I was queuing up the next scene, and I was looking at that next scene out of the Meridio monitor that you see up there, and output 8 on that switch. So being able to switch between the two players and have scenes already queued up really made the event run much more smoother and much more seamless. There weren't any of those uncomfortable gaps of silence while I was trying to find a certain chapter on a disc. So from a switching standpoint, everything ran really well, and I was very proud to be representing AV Pro and Meridio. And Robert wouldn't invite us to this event if he didn't solely trust our equipment, and he even has our matrix switch and a lot of our equipment running his own shop. So we're really happy to participate, and it's really nice to see a system that's that complex work seamlessly. Yeah,
well, thanks, David, for loaning the extra Blu-ray.
Hard to get now.
yeah, UHD right, Blu-ray, and make sure you get them back.
Let's not forget that. Well, I know you got at least one of them back because it had an AirTag on it. Hopefully the second one got back to you in one piece. He put an AirTag on one of them because
don't worry, I know they're with Robert at the moment. I know where they are though.
Are they still hanging at the
and if he doesn't want to give them back, we can make them make the annoying little deet deet noise. So.
Or just give them the eBay price. You could just do that too. Give them the eBay price.
It's funny on that. So the little backstory there, the Oppo 203 is one of the only players that will, out of the box and documented feature, let you look at the contents of a 4K UHD Blu-ray disc before it goes to replication. So we use them a lot. I use them a lot in the work I do here because obviously if you want to be able to test something before it goes out, before it is into a test.
I would think.
So yeah. So the Oppos are very, very sought after in the niche that is optical media authoring for that reason.
And we should tell people, unfortunately, Oppo stopped making it several years ago.
I think they stopped making everything other than most consumer electronics other than cell phones. Yeah.
Cell phones. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to get one, and I think they're selling on eBay now for huge amounts of money.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's nuts. I'll go to the grave with my 2. There's no way I'm getting rid of those things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's take a look at the judging criteria for the 4K TVs. Here's a blank ballot that all of the judges received. Robert, tell us a little bit about the criteria for judging.
Well, I think maybe Jason or David might even be better at explaining this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's let them do it, please.
Okay. David, let's start with you.
Yeah, take it, David.
Take it. 1, 2.
Let's see the card again. So let's go left to right then. Grayscale uniformity is looking at the display's ability to maintain a consistent color of gray. So obviously the broadcast standard for the color of white is D65. If it deviates from that at all, you'll end up with things like the shadows being tinted blue, or not just the shadows. That's the most common thing, but any part of the dynamic range being discolored. And if you have that, then obviously any color that's then laid on top of that area of the picture will be discolored as well. Combined into that was uniformity, and that was looking for things like on the OLED displays, like irregularities in the TFT backplane that would cause like the vertical streaks you'll sometimes see in dark areas, or on the LCD TVs. Sorry for whatever they're calling them now, the LCDs.
They are all LCD TVs.
All LCD TVs.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for mentioning that.
And I said that is a hill I will die on. I'm sorry.
Me too. When you see the term LED TV or mini LED TV, that's referring to the backlight of an LCD TV. And
it's just it's from my perspective. I know I'm not in the business of selling TVs, and it's a razor thin consumer TVs are a razor thin business with razor thin margins already. So don't listen to me. I'm just someone who works in post, but it is needlessly confusing. The number of people who don't work in this industry who I've spoken to, and I'll tell them, advise them and push them down the OLED path, and they go, I've got an LED TV. No, you don't. Anyway, the grayscale uniformity category was. Can you bring the thing? Here we go. It would be looking for panel non-uniformity as well. Shadow detail, I think, is self-explanatory. We were looking for the display's ability to not crush or not exaggerate shadow details coming just when the display is just coming out of black, like just above black shades. I think color accuracy is also self-explanatory.
Right.
Native motion was I had some input into these categories, and I wanted to separate the native response of the panel, which in other words, any motion enhancement, any interpolation or processing turned off, which is what you would use for watching 24 FPS film content, so it stays looking like film. And I believe there's another category in another section which was looking at high frame rate content, so like 60 images per second stuff with the interpolation on, because that I can get into the reason for that later. And then the last category, I believe that is actually a typo on the ballot, isn't it? We were looking for no, that's correct. For SDR, the SDR content was all 1080p, so we were looking at HD resolution, and we looked at content that had a lot of small fine details in it, and also test charts as well. And kind of that category is kind of a that's one of the easier ones, because there's really no reason why a UHD display should not be able to resolve all the resolution that's present in a 1920 by 1080 source.
Sure.
Some of them do little tricks, even with UHD. Actually, like they'll apply just a little bit of high frequency lift in the end, which is annoying. But I think the display that. I think that's mostly defeatable. I'll defer to Jason. I've not spent as much time with these consumer displays as I used to as a reviewer. But yeah, those are the categories for SDR. So
you were looking at SDR content, standard dynamic range, also HDR, high dynamic range content, and that would have been in 4K resolution, not 1080p.
Right.
And the categories, I think the display, or rather the judging parameters are roughly the same, right?
Right. Obviously, for grayscale and uniformity, grayscales, the display is going to be trying to hit the same D65 color of white. Uniformity should be the same. You could argue that if the display is in a mode where it's producing a higher light output, that could affect uniformity as well. But yeah, a lot of those categories are a lot of them are the same. So could you bring up the ballot again? I was and those other three ones. The main difference with HDR is obviously high APL/color. And
APL being average picture level. So if high APL is a very bright picture.
Right. And how, especially with color, it's really assessment of color volume. So how well the display can draw colors that are bright as well as saturated, which some technologies have some issue with.
Right. And then at the bottom of the evaluation form was the out of box evaluation, which Robert mentioned a little earlier. And I think this is probably, you selected the best picture mode that was available, right, on the TV for the out of box measurement, and then didn't calibrate it.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That'd be a Jason question.
Yeah.
Okay.
The out of box performance was basically we say best a lot. We've got to really define best. We talk about accuracy when we talk about best.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the best speaker? It's like one of those things.
Yeah.
What we wanted to do was we wanted to evaluate the sets based on out of box performance. So in other words, you open the box, you put the TV on your stand or on your wall, and just very basic things like turning off energy savings. That's one thing. Picking a better picture mode. Better meaning more accurate. So,
more accurate picture mode. I take your point about better versus more accurate. I'm going to change my nomenclature there too. More accurate.
It's hard. And it's funny because we all get into a room together and we all talk about which one's best. We're just as guilty. But the out of the box performance was basically no energy savings. Pick a mode like maybe movie or cinema or something that was closest to the reference monitors out of the box.
Yep.
A little bit of choices to make on color temperature. There are some combinations sometimes where picture mode and color temperature, you have to kind of make the right combination there. But these were, let's put it in a better mode. Let's measure it. Let's put it up against the reference monitor and just see how well they do out of the box. And it's scary in a good way how close some of these things are these days. But so we wanted to do two different categories because, as Robert said before, not everybody calibrates, but most people do want to know what to do straight out of the box. And this is stuff we've been preaching in ISF for years and years and years. And the fact that people are more aware of it and doing that kind of stuff now really makes us happy because, you do, 3 or 4 basic things out of the box and you're, 60-75% of the way there. The rest is just fine tuning, color correction and stuff. But they did remarkably well for being out of the box settings. Then we did a few different things based on preference, like how it handled motion and things that the purists usually say, turn it off. Right. But some people say, you know what? I get it. It might not supposed to be turned on, but I kind of like it. And it just is what it is.
That's a personal preference thing.
And that's exactly what we had that category for, was more personal preference type stuff. Yeah.
Reverb Mike in the chat room is noticing that on that form, Samsung is on top. Does that mean they won? Robert, that does not mean they won, does it?
You have to look at the results, which you're going to bring up later.
Correct.
It's the layout of how the TVs were displayed.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
The judges can easily follow which one they're voting for.
Right. So the Samsung was top left, maybe.
Top left.
And so they were arranged in order of how they were set up in the array.
It's worth pointing out also that the LCD TVs were mounted at eye level, roughly, because obviously that technology has got viewing angle limitations, especially very severely etching a dark room.
Very good.
So those to kind of emulate what they would. I mean, no one's going to sit and watch TV hopefully from a weird angle. If you have an LCD TV, especially, you have to be at 0 degrees onto it. The OLEDs were on the bottom row because, and also, of course, while all the judging was going on, we were all getting on all fours and peering up close to the display. So each one was face on to us at some point.
Actually, we have 2 photos from the process of judging that I want to show people. Here's one, and you're getting right up close to those sets.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at them. And I really like, I don't know where this particular shot is from, but it's a really good one for skin tones, obviously.
It's from the new Spears and Munsell disc.
It's the new Spears and Munsell disc. Okay, great. Fantastic. And a great disc that is, too.
Thank you very much. I authored it. The reason I bring that up is not just shameless promotion, but for years actually at the Shootout, we were using Spears and the new Spears and Munsell disc. So when I say it's new, it did come out this year, but we Stacy and Co. allowed us to use the work in progress version. And for technical reasons, it took a while to actually appear as a product, but you can buy it now.
It's out now. And a fine disc it is too. I've seen it, and it's really great.
Scott, if I could just one real quick thing about that disc, about that scene that we just looked at with the skin tones. I just want to point out one thing about these images, and this is one thing I really applaud Stacy and Dave and that team. If you look at that image, it's terrible to try to compare this, through a camera on a
photograph off axis.
Right.
Don't judge these TVs from this photo.
Yeah, please don't do that. But what's really great about this particular shot is we're able to look at more than just skin tones. The skin tones are obviously the main purpose of this shot. You have multiple different skin tones, and it's really good to judge it based on that. What people don't realize also is that there's a lot of dark clothing in there, especially solid black. And we're not just looking at the skin tones, but there is some opportunity in there to also look for shadows and wrinkles in the clothing and things like that.
Yeah.
And the background,
shadow detail.
Exactly. And the background of that image is a grayscale. So what's so great about some of the images on that Spears and Munsell disc is that you can use some of these images to look for just more than one thing. And I applaud them for that. Having an all-in-one image like that is really helpful for the
not to mention the color chips that
exactly
that are right on the front there.
Yep, exactly.
Fantastic. We have one other picture I thought was kind of cute of one of the judges
there's Dave
sitting on the floor.
yeah, that's David.
And with the judging form in his hand, staring intently at these screens.
David's the guy whose email and phone were on fire after the Too Dark Game of Thrones episode.
Oh,
he was the guy taking all that heat. We still joke with him to this.
That's right, because he's at Warner HBO. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Wow.
That's David. Yeah. Great guy.
Great guy. Yeah. Okay. So finally we get to the results. We know now who is the king of 4K TV. Let's take a look at the results. And here, Robert, what are we looking at here? These numbers.
Okay. Well, the judges were permitted to vote from 1 to 5, 5 being the best. No zeros, no decimal points.
Just integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Right. 5 being the best it could possibly be.
Right.
We yellow highlighted which TV won in each one of the individual categories.
And let's just explain that these numbers that we see in each of these boxes is the average of the ratings that each judge gave each of those attributes.
We had 8 judges, and this is the combination of all 8 added together, divided by 8.
Right. So the average.
The average. This is the average of all the ballots.
Right. So look at that. The yellow highlight is the highest score.
That's correct. Yeah, somewhat tied.
And there were a few attributes that were tied, but we can see pretty clearly that the Sony A95L, their second generation QD OLED,
that's right,
won basically almost every category, every attribute. But and another thing that's interesting to look at in these numbers is there is something of a range between the top number and the bottom number.
Yes.
Which isn't to say that any of these TVs are bad. Would you agree with that, Jason?
That was kind of what I was saying before. Is that
exactly?
I mean, Robert nailed it when he said that, for a consumer, you're looking for what's the best screwdriver? That's not the question. The question is, what's the best tool for the job?
Right.
So seeing that the scores were so tight like that, and I mean, it was tough. It was, I wasn't able to be a judge, but I was thinking about how I didn't want to have that job because of how close things were. But yeah, I mean, you really can't get a bad one. But what you can do as a consumer is get bad information and make the wrong decision based off that information. So they all had their strengths, they all had their weaknesses, but at the end of the day, all of them were very good.
Right. And I was also interested in the range of prices. The graphic number 2 had the MSRPs that I looked up for all these sets, and they range from $1,400 for the Hisense up to $3,500 for the Sony. There you can see it. So that's a factor of more than 2.
Sure.
Between the least expensive and the most expensive. I almost said cheapest, and I didn't want to say that.
You don't mind me interjecting there? I would say,
yeah, sure.
As a picture quality enthusiast, the competition is between the 3 OLEDs, the 3 emissive displays. That's not to say that LCD TVs are a useless product. Like if you only ever watch TV in a brighter room, you probably don't need an OLED display. They have other benefits too, but
well, they are more expensive generally speaking.
Right. Although that's I'm kind of shocked at how much they've fallen. I remember years ago when I got I'm doing this again years ago. The first 65-inch OLED I ever got was like about $4,000, and now you can get the QD OLED for $3,500. Or what Robert can tell us, what does a standard like LG WRGB 65-inch OLED run these days?
Well, if you're getting the G3, the Gallery series, it's a little bit less, but they're very close in price.
Okay.
But the C3 is pretty significantly less, right?
Significantly less. I think it's $1,599.
Yeah,
and that's amazing. So really, it's not pocket change, but really, I think it's when Panasonic stopped manufacturing plasma displays, the biggest loss I felt was with plasma. Like, it was a mature technology, and of course, like any tech, it has issues, but you could recommend a plasma display to someone of almost any budget. Like if you had the money to spend on a high quality flat panel display, there was a plasma for you.
Yep.
And then when it went away, and in the first years of OLED, that wasn't the case. It was a high end product only. So I'm really happy to see that it's come down in price like that.
One quick thing I want to add: we're going to change for next year.
Yeah.
We're going to separate it into 2 separate events: emissive displays, OLED, for example. And then the next day, we're going to do transmissive displays.
Like LCD,
which
is what it would be. Does that mean
the 2 winners and put them butt up against each other?
Oh, wow. That's going to be great.
It's going to be different. Yeah.
I'm going to have to make my way to New York for that one, I think.
It's mandated that you come.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. Now, quick question. Will the emissive displays include micro LED?
I think so.
One day.
There's more OLEDs coming. I'm not supposed to talk about that. And there's more mini LED LCDs coming as well. So we need to separate it because we'll have more TVs to display.
Right. Well, no, I'm talking about the direct view LEDs.
Micros.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to be fantastic. But for now, we have a king of 4K TVs, according to Value Electronics TV Shootout, which is the Sony XR65A95L, the 65-inch version. It comes in a 55 and also a 77.
Right.
But the A95L, second generation QD OLED, is the best TV that you guys looked at, and I am not surprised. Let's put it that way.
Every professional reviewer also agrees. But one more thing to add is this year is the first year we have a new XR Sony processor, which has always been world class.
Yeah.
And significantly upgraded. The second generation QD OLED panel is significantly upgraded to be brighter, and they claim to have double the life. But the processor has a lot more memory, and it gave the software engineers the opportunity to write much more complicated and larger algorithms. Now they added things like XR Plus, I think it's called, which is all about scaling and upconverting low resolution and low bit rate content to make it look like native 4K.
Which there's tons of that coming out of streaming. So
I hate processing. It's like a bad word. But I got to tell you, man, they really know what they're doing with that. They scale it beautifully.
In addition to knowing that the Sony A95L won the King of 4K TV award at the Value Electronics TV Shootout, we have a picture of the Sony representatives accepting the award. Robert, who are we looking at here?
So the big guy next to me is Rob Brennan, and he's their top training technical guy. Next to him is Pablo Espinoza, who's their top engineer for their professional broadcast division. And the young lady standing next to me is Mara Redikin, who's the public relations manager for Sony Consumer Products.
Excellent. And they all look very happy.
As they should be.
Indeed. Now, Robert, in addition to the king of 4K TVs, which was the Sony A95L, you did for the first time, I think, award a Best LCD TV.
Right.
Is that correct?
Thank you. That is correct. Because not everybody wants to buy an OLED. So we wanted to congratulate the best LCD TV. And this year it clearly was Samsung's QN95C, won for the best LCD TV that was in our group.
Correct. Excellent. And that uses mini LED backlight technology. So it has more zones, dimmable zones. All
my cousins were back there.
I'm sorry?
All the Zohn cousins were back there.
Right. Oh, that's right. Yeah. All cousins of yours, I guess, right? Anyway, I'm glad to know that you decided to recognize the best LCD TV there, because I think most video experts and aficionados, connoisseurs, if you will say that OLED is the better display. But if you want to buy an LCD because it's less expensive or you're in a bright room most of the time, there are reasons to get an LCD. And we know the best LCD of the bunch that was reviewed in the Value Electronics TV Shootout. So that's great. But for now, we have to cut it off because we have the king of 4K TVs. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the 8K TV Shootout, of which there weren't as many. But still, it's an important category that we really want to talk about. So for the moment, I want to thank you all for being here. Robert Zohn of Value Electronics, Jason Dustal of AV Pro Global, and David Mackenzie of, tell me the name of your company now.
Fidelity in Motion. Fidelity
in Motion. That's right. I knew it had those three words in it. Anyway, a colorist extraordinaire and author of content. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey there. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Home Theater Geeks. If you'd like more, you need to be a member of Club TWiT, which costs only $7 a month, and that gives you full access to everything the club has to offer, including all podcasts ad-free and access to the club Discord. Or you can subscribe to Home Theater Geeks by itself for $2.99 a month. You can also get the ad-free audio version for $2.99 a month on Apple Podcasts. New episodes drop every Thursday via Club TWiT and Apple Podcasts. With full club membership, you can even watch us record the show live. Just keep an eye on the events tab in the club Discord for the schedule. I hope you'll join me for a weekly dose of home theater geekitude. Until then, geek out.